So welcome everybody, and welcome to those of you online. These are our GPT pilots. When GPT4 came out, one of our fearless postdoctoral fellows, Ioana Zelko, came to me and said, "So, can we have subscriptions and maybe you could pay for my GPT4?" And I said, yes, because I try to say yes all the time. But I thought that it would be really useful to set a group of GPT pilots. These are people from the CITA National Fellow and CITA Fellow community and students to test the capabilities of GPT-4 specifically with an aim to think about how, issues about how, okay, first of all, ethics in it, but also is this actually useful? What is it useful for? Finding those edge cases. And as part of paying for their subscriptions for 6 months, they agreed to provide a midterm and final report on the program. So first of all, I want to thank them for signing up and doing this. And I know they're very thankful to CITA for support of this effort. But really, this is just going to be a discussion, an improv kind of discussion. I do encourage people, both in the room and online, who have had experience using these different large language models or any of these chatbots or whatever or have thoughts about various things to raise your Zoom hand if you'd like to chime in. And without further ado, I will let our GPT pilots drive. I will take away our previous vets. By the way, I thought that was very unfairly adjudicated, I just want to say.
So thanks for the introduction. So I don't really need to introduce myself anymore, but just so here's a outline of the things we plan on speaking about. Just to orient ourselves, I'll just briefly introduce what a large language model is.
And introduce yourself for the people online.
Oh yeah, I'm Dylan. The one that comes first here. It's in alphabetical order, not because I'm prejudiced towards myself. And we'll talk about why you should care. We'll go through a bunch of different, aspects of how we've been using it in the past few months, so prompt engineering, coding, analytical calculations, etc. And of course, if you have comments, questions, feel free to interrupt at any time as we're talking. So just to briefly orient ourselves, what is a large language model? Well, it's sort of exactly what it sounds like. It's large. So for GPT-4, the exact number isn't really known, but it's something on the order of 1 trillion weights. So it's a neural network, but it's a large neural network that's trained on a large data set. And in this case, it's a large text data set. So basically what it does is it just, when you give it an input, and based on that input, it predicts the next probable word, and then it iteratively does that to generate a comprehensive output. So what makes it different from normal neural networks is, the main thing is that it uses this transformer architecture, which I won't really go into the details of, but essentially at a very high level, it implements this attention mechanism where it can basically weight parts of the input, so different words in an input to, it weights it based off of what it assigns as importance in the sentence. It's sort of to mimic how humans do it, because of course, if I look at this sentence predicts the most probable next word given input, I'm not really reading the law. That doesn't matter so much. I'm weighting various parts of the input to understand it. And one of the main benefits of this transformer architecture is it's highly parallelizable. So that means that you can train it quickly. You can do a lot of the training in parallel, but it also means that you can take large input. So, whereas previous language models struggle to, keep a memory of all of the things it said previously, GPT-4 can sort of understand, it can remember what you said and what it said for a larger window. But one thing to note, this is from GPT itself. GPT says this itself. It's important to note that while large language models like GPT-3 are highly advanced, they're still limited to the data they have been trained on. They cannot provide independent or original insights. verify the accuracy of their responses or possess true understanding of the concepts they generate. So it is, while some of the outputs can seem very remarkable, it's important to be a little bit skeptical of the things it tells you. But with that, I will hand it off to the next person. Oh,
Yes,
do I have to stop
I
sharing?
can check it as well. Okay. So just want to say a couple of words of why you should care about using GPT-4 versus GPT 3.5, which is available for free out there. So first, I think what we need to do is sort of erase some biasing that may have happened, because many people got introduced to this technology, to ChatGPT 3, and may have gotten an impression on performance based on that, such as hallucinations, making stuff up, just wrong calculations and stuff. So just want to give a couple of examples that compare the performance between GPT-3 and GPT-4, so that we can sort of de-internalize that bias that you may already be having about it. So let's say we just give it the task to solve this integral, which if you integrate from minus infinity to plus infinity, there's an odd function, it should integrate to 0. That we can just tell by the eye. So GPT-3 messes up right about here, where it sort of assumes, correctly lists its formula and then says, I'm just going to replace this into this integral and like do nonsense with it and produce square root of pi. But GPT-4 gets it right, and you can also kind of like the displays way more clean and stuff. Another example is more of a what you call logic sentences, text parsing into mathematical formulas. So you can take a second to think for yourself how to solve this. That's all you get. Okay, you got it. So GPT-3 got it wrong. It does very weird associations here between each difference staying constant between these figures that has nothing to do with the logic of the problem. It's just a self-consistent statement in it, and then it takes the statement and plugs it in the logic and then continues the math and then got wrong results. And spoilers, GPT-4 gets it correct and actually follows the same logic that I did in my head when I solved the problem. I don't know what you guys did, but I did the same steps as what GPT-4 is doing right now. And then another example that's close to my heart, I've just run this morning. So this is GPT 3.5. I said, give me a 7-letter word that represents a color with a shade of brown. Gives me sepia, another 7-letter word. I say, okay, it's not 7 letters, you don't know how to count, man. Okay. And then it tries again, still doesn't know how to count. Plus, if I go to GPT-4,
Why are you teaching it? Oh my gosh.
well, that's a big important part of today. Okay. So then I try GPT-4, again it messes up. I say it's not 7 letters, and this time it doesn't mess up. This is the first time I see this guy not mess up and actually be able to count letters in a word. I know this sounds very simple, but this is a thing that it wasn't happening before.
Today it happened?
Yeah.
Because it knew you were giving this presentation.
No, I don't mean GPT. I mean having the ability to do this. Anyway, so
What would happen if you changed the syntax so it said it must have 7 letters in the first thing? Would that focus it?
we could try that. However, I feel like I already lost that chance because I closed the session and I don't know what came over me, but I tried again and then I got this. This is a new session from GPT-4 that gets it correct from the beginning, like 3 seconds after I closed the previous one. So it is learning fast from our input. We knew this. I mean, we knew that they use user input.
That's on you.
I've just never
that's
seen
on
it so directly, like immediately, like as I did today. It was just like, wow, I needed to do this presentation and the example. I can show you my GPT is like aligned. you can see like the history of what I was planning, which is this simple.
Do you think that's because they've actually updated the model, or because it's tracking
It is tracking what you're doing.
like your IP address and it knows the context?
Let me just show you the next slide. So you can choose to keep your data private. So there's this setting here which you can just turn off. This is on by default the moment you make an account. So if you haven't turned this off, it has learned from everything you've ever done. I actually don't mind that it is learning from my thing because I want to code with it. So if it gets better, I'm okay. It's not yet killing us. So mine is on for this reason.
So have you tested it turning it off?
I haven't yet. I haven't been able to already. That place is already gone, right? So, but I have to do that also. So a sad warning though, as promising as all this just sounded, there is good evidence that since March when it was launched until June right now, performance of GPT4 has been decreasing over time. I felt it during my coding sessions, including and just simple documentation, simple debugging has just been needing more feedback. So the process of giving feedback is just usual. Like you just say, you didn't do right, do it again, it's fine. It's just now it's getting more of it. And then this paper was published today by Matej Zaharia, who's like professor in CS at UC Berkeley. That was tracking how both GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 were changing over time, especially since March until June. And their finding is that GPT-4, and a simple example like, is this number prime, used to perform 97%. And now it's gone to 2%. I looked at the paper. It is this is what they say. Like it's not one of those crazy paper sort of things. I mean, obviously this is a reputable person. But there is a bit of a debate right now as to how wide of cases this applies to. So
Can it still do the integrals or not?
the integrals are recent, so yes, they can do those things. And I do think that that's a matter of prompting as well. Like basically, it was still do the prime thing. It was just like prompted the same way. It's just more clunky. I don't know what's happening, but I would guess that the fine tuning that they're doing with all the users at the same time is probably degrading it.
Yeah,
That's
what I feel
that's just
like.
like-
Did you guys experience that? in the real
So
world?
worst case scenario is they turn down the user feedback input into it directly, and then we're fine, right? Like I didn't experience.
So I'm not sure I fully understand when you put the green on, that means that Chat GPT, whether it's 3.5 or 4,
Yeah.
are basically absorbing
Yes.
you into the machine.
Yes. They were observing you also when you were trying.
And June is implying that it's absorbing a lot of noise. So that's
Well, absolutely.
I find that's what happens when I absorb the people of the world.
I mean, what you can observe abusive language, you can observe intent. People can treat this anyway, so it's disaster if you let just unfiltered.
I mean, and there could be an adversarial kind of attacks, like there could be people who are actually trying to
Degrade it.
cohere it so that their product is better. Because you have to remember this is all happening within a very, very supercharged corporate environment.
Right. So technically, they probably have filters behind the scenes because GPT-4 is way harder right now to get to do those kind of attacks with it. So I'm probably they've covered that. I think if they let this kind of verbal thing be in, it would have degraded way sooner. So like for sure, they are checking for this kind of like attacks.
You couldn't say use March's GPT-4. That is to say, use an earlier
frozen the
version.
old
I can't do
ones.
that. No, exactly. I can't do that. Yeah, that's a good stuff. Okay, so a couple of things about prompt engineering. I just wanted to advertise these links. So these are links to websites that have guidelines on the topics of prompt engineering. Coursera has a class that's oriented for business people, but still maybe useful. Deep Learning AI, Andrew Yang has done a 1-hour course on prompt engineering. They're kind of overlapping by now. Like once you get down to like these links, you're kind of understanding prompt engineering because it's really not that big. But right now, if you put on your CV, everyone is like prompt engineering. So it's like sort of clear what you need to learn. Anyway, and then these are some links about particularly using prompts for Copilot, which I'm going to talk about later, and just in general for generative AI. So you can basically, also you can just ask GPT for prompt advice also. Like you can ask it to prompt itself, just FYI, and learn from that. So just a brief kind of structure review. So just so you have ideas. You don't have to follow all of these elements, but in general, and this is especially valid for 3.5, And I feel like most of this research and most of these resources were actually done on 3.5, which needed more of this structure into the prompts. And then GPT4 is able to handle way more simple prompts with the same results. But nevertheless, you can define a role to it. You can say, you're a scientist, you're a Nobel Prize physics winner, you are like the hacker that breaks into the USA government. And then it's science. Basically, what's happening is like moving into a certain probabilistic range of like its training and weights and stuff. And it's more likely to hit the tone that you are looking for. And then you can give the instruction with tasks as detailed as you want. You can go on and be very specific. So if it doesn't work, you go back to the prompt and like specify more things in the prompt. Then you give it a question. It's advised that you leave the question for the end sometimes, because if the prompt is too long, you may not get to the end to actually understand the last parts. So like you should do everything. And I'm sorry, it may not. It will always get to the end, but like it won't put as much weight. So it's better to do it this way. And then you can give it context. Like you can explain. I asked it to write a special poem for my family. So I'm like, I'm at a wedding. I need to thank my family when I'm getting married. Like, can you, write me a poem? That didn't happen. I'm just explaining. I did not do that. Yeah. So, and then this is very useful. You can give it examples of what you wanted to do in it. Like I've used it a lot when I was trying to do coding with XML and output structures of dictionaries and stuff to organize my code, to do a lot of simulations at the same time. And I needed to like basically switch dictionaries around, and I was saying, this is what I have so far. So I was giving it the example of the dictionary so far. I want now the dictionary to be structured so that it gives, I don't know what. So you can give very specific examples and stuff. So as like an idea of all the topics, I hope you can see it, but like the introduction part of prompt engineering is like basically the prompt elements and general tips that I just said. And then you can go to like the techniques that are especially useful for GPT 3.5. Like I haven't found all of them to be very applicable in my research things because it's already working. Like I don't need all this crazy awesomeness. But maybe you guys think, I don't know. Especially the chain of thought prompting may be useful. And then, I mean, some of these things can be used for jailbreaking if you're trying to tell it the rules behind the scenes, which is useful for us because if we know the rules as researchers, we can kind of hack it and figure out, can I get the research articles I want from the internet by forcing you to give it to me? Anyway, a bit forced things. So just as a message, this may run a bit later. We're already late. It's okay, it's just spoiler, 15 minutes over time. Okay, so one thing that you really, really don't want to do is make your prompt very long. There is this concept of tokens. So if you look online, like what length should your prompt be, all of the quotes are going to be, you should not have more than so and so tokens. A token is kind of like a word, but it's not really a word. If you look in this example, in the sentence, GPT is great. The tokens are chat, and then G, and then PP, and then is greater than an exclamation mark. It's basically how you would break these sentences into meaning. Like what parts of these characters are the ones that give meaning to interpretation. So what's actually happening is you're going to have more tokens than words. So both GPT-3 and GPT-4, they're like quoted to be around 2,000 tokens. In practice, if you go over 100 words or 200 words, like basically a couple of hundred words in a single prompt, your performance is going to degrade so fast. Like you're not going to get anything out of it. So this is the trick. This is the limitation right now. This is the most important limitation right now in everything you do. So the tricks become, how are you going to make it safe? Remember those prompts. You can do that. Like you can tell it memorize what I just gave you, and then give it again the next prompt, the second part of your code, and then the third part of your code in different prompts. But you have to separate them into pieces. And I think there is also degrading performance if you have a lot of prompts. It stops you at 25 per 3 hours, but I've gone way beyond that. But I think I felt that there's a performance decrease if you go to like 100 prompts in a single session. Like the thing is starting to like not be so happy anymore. But it's still working. It's not like the degrading into the.
So your point, I mean, just the point here is that engineering the prompt efficiently actually increases performance, gets you what you want faster, and gives you more accurate response.
That's
so
right.
It's not just speed.
Yes.
It's
So
also
what I'm saying is try first and then open a new session. Like you do your thing in your first session and you saw what worked, what didn't work, and then try again from a new session kind of thing, and then it's gonna be more clear.
it needs to sleep.
No, just, just you reset the memory of it, like what you have to store it. And you can also, if you see that it's using bias results and stuff, you can also just, or anything else, you can just say specifically, don't do that. And then it won't do that anymore. It's pretty simple. Sorry, so I think something else comes now. Connor?
Yeah, I think I'm next. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right, then I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to talk a little bit about coding with GPT. So yeah, I've used GPT more and more in my coding. And the question of why is it worth it? I think the thing to ask yourself is how much would you pay per month to save yourself a few hours every week? And if it's more than like $25 a month, then GPT is worth it. So next I'm going to try and show you some examples of what I've been using it for. First up, I was using this package called Keops. It's really specialized differentiable matrix operation code. It's extremely powerful, but it doesn't have a super huge community using it, so it's not as fully documented and like explored as a lot of other packages. So as I was trying to get it to work on a server, I ran into an error that I wasn't able to solve by just trying things out, just by going through the documentation or by Googling the issues that I was encountering. So I literally just explained what I was trying to do. I'm trying to install Keops. I explained a little bit about why I was having difficulty and like what I was trying to do. And then I just copy pasted the full error trace that was coming out whenever I tried to run it and asked it to see what it could do. And just by like parsing all of that information, which was everything, not just the parts that I thought were most relevant, it immediately identified what the issue was, missing certain Python header files. It immediately identified what to do about it and gave me step-by-step instructions depending on what my operating system was. And it basically just said at the end, if everything is done correctly, it should run without errors. And sure enough, I just followed the instructions and it worked. And I got to move on to my next thing. And it saved me a ton of time of trying to go back and forth with documentation or exploring the code itself instead of the documentation. It just worked and I got to move on, which was really great. Second is coding with GPT. I created.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Yeah, sure.
So you're using what is a somewhat obscure programming language.
Well, it's a package for Python, yeah.
I see. So it means that the GPT-4 completely learned it.
Well, so GPT-4 has essentially ingested everything that was on the internet at a certain time period. And since this was up on GitHub, it had ingested all of the code. And so it understood this package, even though there wasn't a ton of documentation and stuff on the internet.
Okay, you mean GPT-4 has got Fortran?
It says it right there, what you have to do, right? It says right in the error message what's missing.
Exactly. Would you agree that it could have solved this even if it had never seen Keops before? Because as Martin just pointed out, everything you need, like I think it's just doing pattern matching on the error trace. Right. It has nothing to do with the Keops documentation.
Yeah, right. That's what I would have thought.
But that's fine. That's
I
fine.
can answer that question. It knows the documentation for every package on GitHub. Just know that.
So
It's
ingested all of GitHub and it's ingested all of Stack Overflow. So sometimes actually it'll give you an answer. And if you look it up, it'll be almost the same as what was on Stack Overflow because it has ingested Stack Overflow. And if that's the right answer, it'll just give it back to you.
And I think there are some cases where you're going to be able to very quickly debug and other cases where you're going to waste I mean, who hasn't been a graduate student wasting weeks of time on a stupid bug? Like,
Exactly. So I'm quite confident. I'm quite confident that I could have solved this if I like dug into it and like really worked on it. But that would have cost me a couple hours of work, whereas this did it instantly. So that's what I'm talking about. Is GPT can save you a few hours every time you're involved in a coding project.
It also answers questions that are not on Stack Overflow. Like there's been very clear, questions so that you can't find Stack Overflow, and it may give you a solution. And it also gives you 4 different types of approaches depending on your OS systems and stuff. So it is not just brute spewing out what it learned there. It is actually understanding the structure, especially for the command line. It's just very good at that.
Yeah, it's indistinguishable from someone who really understands coding really well in a lot of scenarios. Certainly better than me. So my second example is I wanted to make a plot. I had access to a covariance matrix for the errors on a whole bunch of parameters, and I wanted to plot those with ellipses like this, where I could show the like 1 sigma, 2 sigma ellipses and the covariance between them. So I would literally just like explained that in plain language is like, I have a covariance matrix. I want to plot these ellipses in a corner plot and everything. And it generated the code to do that. But there were some slight issues with it. The ellipses were flipped. And I said, oh, the ellipses are flipped. I think you've made a mistake. And it said, oh, yes, I have made a mistake. And it gave me a corrected version of the code. And then I said, I'd like to have the Gaussians along the diagonal. And it said, okay, I can do that. And it rewrote the code so that the Gaussians would be plotted. I said that I wanted to plot the true values as just red lines going through all of the plots. And it said, yeah, I can do that. So I basically had a conversation with GPT back and forth, and I slowly built up this plot that you're seeing now. But it didn't start that way. It started with just the ellipses because that's all I asked for. And then I added in other elements just in a basically conversation back and forth until I had the final plot that I wanted. And I know how to do all of these things individually, but it's a pain to keep track of the indices of where all the subplots are in matplotlib and everything. And so it just saved me time. It made everything go faster because I could just ask it in plain language what I want, and then get that back immediately. Like within seconds, I had some code that I could start to tinker with.
Sort of like a graduate.
so I think Nayesh has his hand raised, so I'd like to hear his question, but I think this example highlights a really important thing. Like, you had to know what you were doing to correct it. So if you didn't know what you were doing, and this is kind of a warning, I think, like you might just be reporting things that are bogus, right? So I do think that that's an important thing. Nayesh, go ahead.
Thanks a lot. So I have another question. Is this, would you be able to do the same thing with the free version, or you think you could only do this with the GPT-4?
GPT-4 is a lot better. Like 3.5, you can probably get it to do this, but it'll take you longer and you'll have to be more explicit about what you want. And you may still have to go in and fix a few things yourself. For me, literally, like if it crashed, I just could type in something is wrong, it crashed. And it would go back and look at the code and be like, oh yeah, I must have made a mistake here. Like it figured out its own errors without me even copying in the error trace half the time. Like GPT-4 is a lot better.
Okay, thanks.
So for use this, do you need to provide a simple code, or like how do you start with it?
So in this scenario, I just described in plain language what I want. But often I will copy in, like, this is the code that I've got right now, but I want it to be able to do this extra thing, or it's not working in this scenario, or like I'll explain what I want from it, but I can give it a starting code, and that's really helpful as well.
But here you were just trying to generate the code to make the plot, right? This is just a general case without the real data in it.
Yeah. In this case, it was purely plain language, told it what I wanted, and got code out of it. It was pretty amazing. And then my last example is not super incredible, but basically all I did was start copy pasting my code in and saying, can you please document this code in Google format and everything. And I copy pasted in this class that was for a point spread function image. And it gave me really nice, really clear documentation, properly formatted immediately. I could just copy paste it, put it in and move on. It got to the point, like at the beginning, I was like reading through all of everything that it generated and making sure that it was right. But by like halfway through of my code base, I was just copy pasting it in because I trusted it so much. Like it was really understanding what was going on.
I mean, that's what it wants you to do. What about the performance degradation? Like now is half of your documentation garbled at the end, or?
No, it's not. I mean, I still checked every now and then. And at some point, I probably have looked at all of my documentation, like by eye. But
You gotta see, like, existential risk is here.
no, but like
We're throwing you on.
some things that I learned along the way is one, if you already have a doc string, it's kind of just gonna copy paste that. So what's better is to write little bits of documentation like above each line saying like, oh, this does this calculation, this is this variable. And then it can sort of like synthesize that into your like a top level documentation that would actually be up on your website. And yeah, like, I mean, I also didn't trust it immediately, which is why I read through everything for quite a while. But it got to the point where I wasn't changing anything for like dozens in a row. And I'm like, okay, I'll just trust it.
Exactly what it wants you to do. Okay.
And as for performance degradation, I mean, this is a pretty simple prompt. I started with saying like, hey, can you document the code? And here's the format I want and everything. And then I just started over and over again, copy pasting in functions. And it went on for hours like this and it did fine. But if it ran into any issues, I would have just started a new session, gave the same explanation and then carried on.
Does it work? Have you tested this between different platforms? Like, does it work better like on different machines or whatever? I mean, like in terms of how it's performance degradation over time? Because like Ioana, you're saying that yours was kind of getting bad after like more than 100 prompts per hour or something.
I think it really depends on your problem. Like,
yeah. Okay.
This was a very simple prompt. All it had to keep in its head was the Google format documentation.
Yeah. So this would be fine. The thing that it would not do anymore is like it's not able to change that much outside the box anymore because it seems so much is playing within the same rules. So it's gonna get hard to change if you're trying to say, okay, but think about this in this way, or like do this other thing. Then it's kind of gone down a sort of like style path, kind of, or like thinking path. So I often combine design this, like I first give it my CV, then I give it a prompt from a job, and I say, with my CV, with the job, make the application. Those are quite different things in there.
I fully support that use of ChatGPT.
I show the examples. So is that okay? Should I start?
Thank you, Connor.
Yeah,
do you have more?
That's me for now.
And Connor, do you want to tell everybody who you are for those online who might not know who you are?
Oh, yeah. So my name is Connor Stone. I'm a postdoc, CITA National Fellow. I'm actually at UDM in Montreal. So yeah, I don't think I should get into details of like my research and stuff, but that's who I am.
Cool. So I didn't introduce myself. I guess I'm Ioana Zelko. I'm here at CITA Toronto postdoc. And so we just wanted to mention a bit about other tools that you can use for coding as well, sort of in at the same time, because they are a bit different. So one very useful thing is the GitHub Copilot, which if you go to this link here, it opens this website for which everyone in this room qualifies for free. So if you're a student, you apply for a student, and if you're a teacher, apply for a teacher. And by teacher means everyone. Okay, they're not going to check that you haven't taught a class or something. So like it's fine. They're just going to check you have to register with your university email. so .edu, and you have to be next to Toronto. Like if you try to do this from another town, it's gonna notice you're not next to University of Toronto. It's gonna be like, okay, what are you doing? And they're not gonna approve it. This is actually the package from GitHub that's given to students. It has a lot of other things as well. It's like the whole GitHub education package. It's not listed there, but it includes GitHub Copilot, which I think is like the most important thing right now. So you get that for free, and you should definitely do it. Now, what is that? So, 1 second. Yes, GitHub Copilot can be used with different code interpreters. Oh, you're not seeing this. 1 second. Share.
What does it say? I can't.
Worth noting, it has by default a certain temperature setting to control the stochasticity of the answers.
Yeah,
So
where do you see that?
That was in one of the comments from
From Copilot, I mean.
just GPT.
Yeah, so for other LLMs, you can change the temperature. For GPT, you can't.
You can do it for GPT with
With the API thing.
Yeah.
Nice.
or look later.
Nice. Okay, so let me just show you a bit how to use GitHub Copilot and what it's about. So first you need a code interpreter, probably you've used one before. If not, you can just try it, VS Code. It's very nice. A code interpreter like this, by the way, is just very useful just in general. It has a lot of features for debugging and just awesomeness that you can use. But the way it works is like, now I'm just gonna write my Python script and I'm just gonna say, make a function that prints all the prime numbers be smaller than a given number. Notice how it's trying to autocomplete already, like it was trying to give me a thing. So,
Bigger, please.
oh, you're not
Command
seeing
plus,
anything?
say.
What?
Command plus.
Hit Command plus.
The font is too small for people in the back.
Okay. Hopefully that's not what I meant. Okay. It's adding more documentation, but we don't need it. I can just say define, okay, and then it's gonna give the proposal for the function you just gave it. So this is Azure coding. It's automatically trying to propose things. It's very useful when you're just drafting the code. So I would actually recommend drafting the code first and then putting it in ChatGPT. Because it's basically auto-completing variable names, and you should use long variable names when you're coding because you want to know what they mean. And that takes a long time when you have a long variable name that describes. But this is just instantaneously because it already knows what you're going to type. So it's just like you see the variable name and you can say, okay, tap, 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 and you'll approve each of them, and then it becomes super fast. Like I've been coding like a happy person for like a couple of months now. So then, okay, let's say.
So just, can I interrupt real quick? So you're using GTP.
No, this is Copilot. This is
That's what I was wondering. Is it using, this is
No.
just a completely separate thing?
different company.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, yeah.
Microsoft owns GitHub,
They do own. But
and they have a partnership with.
it is not using the same thing. You can tell just by what's doing.
Okay.
Like it's just dumber than before. Sorry. But the cool thing is that you can also force it to generate 10 different solutions to this. So I run a command right now, I said Control Enter, and it's giving me 10 different ways of synthesizing that, not all of which may be working, but you kind of have to go through them and sort of. Okay, so this is all good.
Can you ask me to type prioritize the memory or prioritize like the GPU use?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you like specify their solution to be like prioritized?
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome.
Does any of these look actually only until square root of n? I mean, this is completely stupid code.
They have 80 solutions.
It's also, it's the code that and it's suggesting it doesn't do what the comment asks. You ask it to print numbers and it's returning you a boolean. Like it's not, the function that it's suggesting is not.
The title is prime should return on, right?
Right, but that's not what she asked it.
Right, so I
It
mean,
suggested his prime.
I think the point is, we can rely on, you have to rely on having some knowledge to
I knew this was gonna
reject
happen.
certain things that is being said.
I knew
If
this
you don't
was
have
gonna happen.
that, then you're lost in this
This is
world.
why I have the other code I did this morning where you did find the same thing. So, where is it? So so this is when I wrote it this morning, and I made it prime numbers, and it was printing the right thing immediately. Okay, so it was just a matter of like writing def, instead of letting it just, no, I didn't even type def this time, I just made a different line. So like this generated the right way. Anyway, okay, so the nice thing.
GPT4 to do this? Would it do it better?
Yeah, yes, something like this is like very, very well done.
GPT4 versus.
Yeah. So the nice thing about this though is that it knows of your other files. Isn't that amazing? Now I feel like you unlocked, awesomeness, because I can have, how you're supposed to code with modular, functions and stuff, to not have unreadable code and stuff. Anyway, so like you separate files and you separate classes and you separate all these things. Anything actually is supposed to know. It doesn't perform that well. Like it doesn't always know, but it's supposed to. So like they kind of have the infrastructure, and once they actually connect the best AI thing on it, it may actually do magic. So then they did the next thing, which was Copilot X. So they said, okay, no one is using this thing properly, because everyone sees that GPT4 is performing better because you can interact. Like my only way of interacting here is to add comments above and be like, well, actually, what really make it, optimize memory or something. Like it's not a very great interface, right?
As we saw from some of the downtime
Yes.
that was identified.
Wow. Okay. Okay, good. I know that. Okay, so then you can go to this website and GitHub Copilot X, and then sign up on the wait list to be added to this. And I got lucky and I got added the next day because they do it in batches basically, and it happened that my batch got approved the day after I signed up on the wait list. But I think my other ones are still waiting to get approved. So they sign up on the list for like about 3 months now. They haven't gotten this thing. But once you get on the Copilot X again for free, what you get is you get the chat here. And now you have a chat there. Now you can say, make me a function that prints all the prime numbers below n, and add documentation, whatever. And then basically you can go back to it and say, no, you're wrong, try again, and basically interact with it. Why is it so slow? Anyways, moving on. Thinking.
So the point though is that there's tool, Copilot is like, okay, but not great.
No, it's
But
something you should
Copilot
be
X is much better.
Well, I don't know, like, I don't know, I don't use that guy that much.
To be clear, Copilot X is GPT.
Is it?
Yes. So the point of Copilot X, as you pointed out, was people were complaining that it was easier to just copy it as GPT, so Copilot X is GPT4 integration.
Oh no, okay.
Okay,
There it is. Now we're happy.
Oh, got it.
Okay, so we can say, I don't like it. Make it better. I swear I give better feedback than this normally. This is just an example. Anyway, so you can do that. And basically, when do you use one versus the other? So Copilot is already integrated in your workflow because technically most coders already use IDE like that. That's really the default because you want to use all those functionalities. It knows of different classes at the same time, and you may actually get lucky and actually understand different classes and stuff, and it's going to be good. And it's good for comments, short blocks of code, but anything more than that is not going to be happy. Like I've used GPT4 to do insanity in coding, like actually get complicated matrix analysis and stuff in it, like done in code correctly, verified check. And then GPT4 basically handles much more. I actually haven't had GPT4 not work on anything I've tried yet for coding, which is, I don't know, a statement of where I code at or something, I don't know, but like, it's pretty good. But it takes some effort and some problems. Like you have to be very patient.
You guys will be competing with barbecue in 15 minutes, just so you know.
Yes, we're fine, we're okay. This is survival, this is our life. We have to survive, right? So like, learn this to live.
So besides Python, are there other languages?
Yeah, it can translate your code into any other language, pretty much that was available, properly documented on the internet. There were a couple of languages that were very vetted. I think there were 5 of them that were like Java, C++, Fortran, I think was one of them, I'm not sure. But they were just, this is gonna be 100% covered. but I think it can do Lisp and other things as well. If Lisp is still very nice, available in the internet ecosystem. And then OpenAI code interpreter, Vasilii is going to cover that. That's also magic. And just some prompt examples for coding in general. So like you already saw, you can add line comments, and basically you can also ask code to be reformatted for legibility. This is very nice because we weren't born with this, and we didn't have the same skills we do right now when we were younger. So we can just go to my first year grad school code and make it actually GitHubable, publishable, because now it has nice things in it. And then you can basically say, act like a very senior Python developer. This is actually funny. This actually changes things. Like, this role part of the prompt actually is relevant. And then you can say, please optimize the script. This is useful. This actually, we can all benefit from this probably. And then basically you can do, I usually use all these examples, and debug errors. You can give it also without error. You can just give it a wrong piece of code that has an error in it with no error message and say, tell me what's wrong. And it will try. And probably succeed. Okay, so now you're
Yes.
Just a quick question. So for Copilot, does it need to run on your laptop, or does the code need to be your laptop? Can it be on a server? Does it work anywhere?
Your code needs to be in the same location where your IDE is at. So your VS Code in IDE needs to be, but you can put your IDE on the cluster. We've done it. So
You've tried that?
yeah, we're running IDEs on the cluster VS Code. Yeah.
But you need internet access to use Copilot configuration.
Yes. Yeah, it's not on your account. Yeah.
Hi.
Vasilii, tell everybody online who you are.
Right, you should be able to see this. Yes, you see this. It's amazing. Hello, we're very behind schedule, so I'll just run through this. Hi, I'm Vasilii. I work here at CITA. Now, here to tell you about the things that you probably did not know about ChatGPT, because, well, they paid for us. And this stuff, you have to pay in order to access it. So, in paid ChatGPT, this is what you guys use most of the time. This is what we, get to use. So if you click here, you see that there are a couple of models. There is a default, which is like GPT3.5, but better. There is also a code interpreter, which is amazing. There is also plugins, and there was also a browsing plugin. Just a little bit of weeks before now, which rest in peace, because apparently someone was misusing this, and they had to cut access to the browsing plugin for GPT4. So what it does is basically surfs through the web, gets you the data, and just makes browsing much easier. For instance, you go to the website, and like, oh, when is the conference going to happen? I don't want to go, Googling, I don't want to spend a minute of my life Googling, so you just spend 5 seconds of your life asking ChatGPT to Google it, and it does that, and provides you with sources, which is pretty useful. But, that's a big problem. Now,
How many social security numbers did we harvest?
Okay, so this is the stuff of the interesting stuff, the plugins. Basically, a few months ago, I think sometime in March, they allowed other developers to develop the plugins that can interact with ChatGPT, and it's only available for GPT4 because it's just better. And so I listed a few of here. There is much more. There is like 100 of them. The ones that we might be interested in are the Wolfram language plugin, which I'll show in a second, and the research assistant, which browses for the papers for you. Speaking of which, I've got an example here with the Wolfram plugin. Here's an integral, which, trust me, is 0. You can x equals 1 over x, whatever you can do, substitution. I mean, it's 0 from 0 to infinity. Sorry, I didn't put that in, but yeah. If you just ask the raw GPT-4 model, it does this, which is, it says that this integral is minus pi over 2 psi of 1/2, when psi is the d gamma function. I don't think that's a 0. Maybe it is. I don't know. And then when I ask GPT-4 plus well-friendly acts like your college professor and says the integral of this is 0 and doesn't give you anything else, which is pretty useful. Just basically using Wolfram. Like if you type this thing into Wolfram, it will be able to solve it very quickly. Yeah, here's another one, which is Explorer AI, which is a plugin that allows you to browse through the papers. So, we have all heard about the nanograph recently. So I'm like, oh, everybody in my department talks about it. I have no idea what this is. Can you tell me what it is? And it gives you a very personalized, I'm sorry, as an AI language model, I cannot tell you that. However, if you use the plugin with, yeah, that was a failure. If you use a plugin, it actually gives you 4 papers and summarizes them just as I asked. Yeah, so this is very good for just compiling a list of references. And I think here we get to the best part, I think. The OpenAI introduced the code interpreter plugin just like a week ago or so. And first I was skeptical, like, well, what can this thing do which my Python environment cannot? And I think this morning I actually found the meaning of life. So any of you who have tried using ChatGPT for coding? Anyone? Yes, yes. How many of you would say that 70–80% of the time it gives you the right answer right away without any bugs? That's what I was expecting. Now, what this thing does, the code interpreter, it writes the code, executes the code, debugs the code automatically, feeds it back into itself, debugs it up until it gets the perfect result. Which, yay! Which it also can do visualizations, read large files, PDFs, not scanned ones. I tried, and it's just great. So here's an example that I did. I gave it the following prompts, like create me. I work with single particle kind of dynamic simulations. Just give me an initial conditions for the Milky Way like galaxy. If you would give this to the GPT-4, it would freak out. Oh, this is a hard problem, 1,000 particles, that's so much, please don't do that to me. But then, look at this, just a couple of minutes later, I get this. I didn't plug anything into Python. I literally just asked that, and I get this as an output. Of course, it was like thinking for a long time, it was coding, it was debugging, it was coding again, it was debugging again, it was telling itself that I'm wrong. But here's the thing, it doesn't sound impressive enough, that's why I said, oh, can you maybe add a spiral and zoom it in? Well, here you go. Right away.
What is it doing? Sorry, I don't get it. What is the relation to the prompt?
No, I just added a spiral, I added another prompt there, add a spiral there and zoom in, because you see here, boundaries are kind of all over the place. I have an object here that I'm interested in, just zoom in, and it did it automatically. Basically, I didn't.
The prompt you gave it were find it, and that was the prompt.
That wasn't the prompt. The prompt was a little bit more complex. I just don't want to.
There are no data. There are no data. You just said.
No. It generates the data.
Okay, it generates the data.
It writes the code to generate the data. Then I asked it to plot this for me. So generated the data, plotted this data on inside of ChatGPT. I didn't put import very script to Python at any point. This is a very small and silly example, but I think, if you know what you're doing, which is definitely not me, you can actually make this thing very, the wonders for you.
Did you look at the code that it generated? Did you ask it to?
You can look at the code. I didn't because, I had to do a presentation today in the morning. But yeah, 6 minutes.
This is completely wrong. I just thought with even eyes and not Milky Way.
Well, yes.
It's completely wrong.
It is completely wrong. I am not saying this is right. If you, I think, is it this prompt or no? Does it say that in one of the prompts I said I don't?
Even then it's wrong. I mean, it's a single spiral.
Yes. I don't.
But the prompt is wrong.
Exactly.
It's done what it's been told to do.
Yeah, I just tried.
It's just that it's been told to do something wrong.
Exactly. The machine is smart. I'm dumb. That's the problem.
No. The machine is just a tool, right?
Exactly. That's what
But I still don't understand. Did it actually write
It rolled the
1,000 particle n-body code?
It didn't try the n-body code. It just generated initial conditions for me. But then I decided, okay, actually, let's write. here's another thing that is great. I asked it, okay, I told you that you can put in PDFs into it. I have an office map which is like, oh, when will we be able to feed the papers to ChatGPT and say, write this for me? This happens to day 8 because I fed it the paper and it actually did what I asked it to do, which is, the weighted parameter tessellations, basically, generate the initial conditions based on that method, and see, it works. And yeah, again, what I did here is I just gave it the PDF. This is, I took a PDF, fed it to ChatGPT. You cannot give the files to GPT 3.5, but you can to the call interpreter, and it read through the PDF and generated. Also, I have to mention that this paper was before 2021, so just might have known about this, but nonetheless, I think it's pretty impressive because it also summarized the paper for me.
But you would have, clearly, you would have to give it the right prompt, and you would have to check it, and,
Yes, I did all of this in like an hour, so yeah. Here's the thing, even more. Again, I am not touching my Python environment. Like, how about writing just a simulation? And this doesn't look good, but it did something. See, there is a blob, there is another blob, and they kind of go around. I think this is amazing. If you prompt it correctly, as Juna said. Which
most people won't do. So the point, you're having a strong reaction, which is the right reaction, that this is a generator of great stuff and also a generator of great bullshit. And so one has to be very careful. But it's very powerful. So it just supercharges excellence, but it also supercharges bullshit. So will the bullshit win? And we are the last stand against bullshit. That is CITA. Okay.
I would like to argue though that people have made bullshit manually before as well.
Exactly. That is correct. I see your argument.
So
sometimes fast. Just not as fast, but we have to be slower at making them move.
There's certain people at Harvard.
Now.
Again, this thing is not about look at how great my research is, because it's not even my research, it's just me prompting machine to do it. Something. Just look at the possibilities here, because literally one prompt and I got some results, 2 more tweaking prompts and I got this. If you give it more sort of correct data, correct information, then...
Where did it run this? Where did it run?
It ran itself. Oh yeah, this is SPH code that has been written in Python. Wow. Just...
What resources?
What machine was it running the actual simulation?
I think on that server.
Yeah, you can actually have it self-inspect and execute both if config on the Python environment and say, where are you?
Exactly.
Tell you what I
Yeah, this is the thing that I'm trying to get here. It wrote the code, it executed the code, wrote errors, debugged itself, tried again and again up until it had something reasonable.
Have you tried NPI code?
No. I just pretty much all the Python.
After the barbecue, that's what we're gonna do.
I think you should try something in your own area of expertise where you can actually judge it. And because I think you'll find, like with the documentation, I'm a little bit worried that...
Do you want a license? I can extend one to you. You can do it. All right, let's go. More. We have barbecue waiting.
This is it for me. Yeah, thank you.
For now.
I don't think I'm coming back.
It's already 12 now.
No, we're not coming back.
Anyway, I will try to be brief. But my colleagues here are very enthusiastic salespeople at GPT. I'm a little less enthusiastic about it. And so I'll give an example where I used it for an analytic calculation. And I will explain why I think there is some reason for caution. So I ask it, can you find the Feynman propagator for this particular... sorry. Well, that's still probably quite small, but in any case, this is just the output is not so important to actually read. But I ask it, find Feynman propagator for this potential. This is something that I needed to do, and I will point out this is GPT4, and also that this answer exists, and I know where the answer is. It's in a handbook for propagators. The answer has a typo. That's why I asked it, because I wasn't sure where they didn't show you in these handbooks. They don't show their work, right? but I was certain that the answer was close to correct, but there was something wrong with it, and I wanted GPT to find the thing that was wrong with the propagator. One is that at the first instance, this was before I had various plugins to do things, but at the first instance, it gives you some garbage that you can't read, and then you ask it to make it compilable in LaTeX. So here is what it compiles, and it gives a very persuasive answer, and it gives this answer. This is also completely incorrect. And it is incorrect in multiple spots. One, it tells you to do a change of variables, and then it forgets to do the fact that you need to change the measure of the integrand, right? You can't just change variables and integrate. It does that incorrectly first, and it does that in order to get to a form where there is a simple answer that it knows about. So this this integral, once you do the change of variables, has a simple answer that you can find in textbooks and its various things. So it does this change of variables in order to get it to this form so that it can give me an answer. But that is incorrect. And then I tell it that it's wrong, because I mean, you don't necessarily expect GPT to do the right thing first. That's, in general, it often gives you the wrong answer first. You have to iterate with it. So then I tell it, oh, you're wrong. You didn't do the integration. You didn't change the measure of the integrand correctly. And it says, okay, yeah, that's right. And then it does something that is just completely wrong, even though so it does it wrong anyway. One thing that I only noticed looking at it today was, not today, like yesterday when I was preparing this, was that it also does this wrong.
It's not using the Wolfram Alpha plugin, right?
Correct, yeah, it's not using the Wolfram Alpha plugin. So some of these issues will be fixed with some of the plugins.
The Wolfram one, I mean, that actually, in all your experience, hasn't generated garbage.
Well, the thing about the Wolfram one is that it just gives you what you can put into Wolfram. You don't, I mean, it's nice to have it integrated, but it doesn't actually solve the problem for you.
But it would solve every case you mentioned so far, because all of this was just miscalculation of pure math, that if it were to have put it in Wolfram, it would have computed it correctly.
Well, sure, but I mean,
this is, I think you demonstrated this whole approach is never going to be good at symbolic manipulation unless it connects up to a dedicated symbolic manipulation package.
Yeah.
The best way of doing this. Well, it's impossible because it's just immensely native text. It's in the internet. It's not possible.
No, but I think the point is that it's starting to, it actually can be directed. No, Chris, it can be directed to do the symbolic manipulation correctly. I think that's why if it was just blah blah blahing, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
But is it blah blah blahing in perfect tech? It looks
yeah, it does.
Yeah,
the tech is perfect. The tech is flawless.
nothing else.
Can you train it with the Wolfram? Like you generate a large data set from Wolfram and train it?
Probably, I don't know. But anyway.
As of 2 weeks ago, Mathematica 13.3 came out, and it's actually got GPT4 integrated into it, so you could run causality the other direction. So in Mathematica, you just say, write me some code, and then that's the only way I've interacted with GPT4. And so if you're concerned, I guess as somebody back there was, about it spewing up garbage, you could do it from within the symbolic algebra package itself,
Sure.
and then it'll test itself.
Yeah, I think that is the correct approach. But anyway, I'll get to sort of the main takeaway that I'm taking away from this example. Oh, and then I mentioned that this is still wrong. And then it gives me, oh yeah, it's still wrong. You can use the stationary phase method to do it, but that's an approximate method, which is exactly what I was trying to avoid doing. I wanted the exact answer. But in any case, it does eventually get to something that is correct. It's just not what I wanted. So, it's not like all of these issues could, in principle, be solvable, but at the end of the day, well, that's not important. At the end of the day, it wasn't what I wanted, and it took a lot of effort to get to something that I didn't want to begin with. And also, for coding, I think GPT it's proven to be very useful. But that's partially because you have a well-defined output that you're looking for. When you're asking for analytic calculations where there may not be an answer, like it may not be, and there just might not be an analytic answer to what you're asking for. It doesn't know that there's no answer, but it's still going to try to give you one because that's what you asked it to do. So, and GPT doesn't know that it's lying. It doesn't understand that but it will lie to you. And you do need to be quite attuned. You need to be an expert in what you're doing sometimes to tell that it's lying, because it will be very persuasive when it lies to you. So it's a very useful tool, but you have to be careful with it because, like I said, it will lie. And with coding, you can put it into a thing and you'll see it gives you the wrong answer. With
That's
analytic
why
calculation, you cannot.
That is why we have state-of-the-art blackboards in the space. So just FYI, the GPT is not going to be replacing analytic theory soon.
So anyway, I will stop there, and we should probably stop because.
Yeah. So do you guys want to say any concluding words? We do have barbecue, but I also want everyone to thank you. Let's get started.